We are back for another episode of the Stronger Together podcast experience. And I'm extremely excited because we continue to bring people together. We continue to work with our solution providers like our sponsors, Bulb and Swivel. Thank you for all you do to make everything possible to bring all these great guests and all this great message to the listeners and the viewers. And not only are we being stronger together with our solution providers, we're being it outside of the United States. Too many times I hear educators talk about the states, or the teachers here in a specific state. Well, one of the things I'm learning really quickly in the opportunity I've had working with Codebreaker, and now you'll see Mammoth Learning is part of our team, our Australian branch, is that not only are there educators, and this could be news to our United States listeners, in the United States, they're outside of the United States. Newsflash. And I've learned so many things over the last almost 2 years now working with, my really great friend Brett over in Australia, and now we signed an author from India, and now working very closely with our team in Canada. Just how much talent is out there, how many people are looking to come in and spread their message and their work. And I'm going to bring one on tonight, our newest member of the Codebreaker team, Joël McLean. Did I get that right?
What's going on? That's right, Matthew. How are you?
Good. So first of all, where are you coming in from?
Well, I'm coming in from North Bay, Ontario, Canada. So some people might not know where that is, but it's in Canada. It's in the province of Ontario. We're about 3.5 hours north of Toronto. So we're actually considered like the southern of Northern Ontario, because North Bay is actually situated pretty much well in the middle, like before Southern, which is Toronto. We're just about in the middle between, Toronto, Ottawa, and a big mining city a little bit more north from us, which is called Sudbury. So yeah, that's where we're from, about 50, 55, 60,000 in population. So a great place to settle down. And I've been here since 2001 and enjoying it ever since.
Awesome. So tell all of our listeners, viewers, who you are, what you do, and just share a little bit about your story.
Absolutely. So listen, thanks for being here. I love the intro music too. It's pretty awesome. It's epic. It's like that epic music when you're introducing Stronger Together podcast. So yeah. So listen, I'm an educator. So I've been in education since 1997, way back then. And
hold on a second. You say it like way back then. I was in 93. So like I graduated college. So I love the dramatics there, but I was 5 years out of school then. Keep going, Miss.
Hey, I'm going to keep going, but it was a long time ago. It was a long time ago, but we're still looking like it was only 10 years ago. So it's all good, Matthew.
That's how you have to go about it, right?
Yeah. So back in 1997, and I'm a science and chemistry teacher. So I started teaching in the grade 7 and 8 levels for about 3 years, and then that's back in 2001 is when, after 3 or 4 years of teaching down south, closer to Southern Ontario, which is Toronto, we moved back up north here in North Bay and established, my wife and I established ourselves and our family here in North Bay back in 2001. And that's when, I went to the high school level as a chemistry teacher and enjoyed that for many years until 2006. And I've actually been a school principal since 2006. So that's when I made the leap and went up as school principal of a grade 7 and 8 school, about 200 students. Okay. And since then it's been a fantastic ride. I've reached out. I've taken risks. I've lived a lot of different experiences throughout my career in education. For me, it's important to stay fresh. It's important to keep challenged, and so because of that, I went on detachment or secondment to the Ministry of Education here in Ontario, and that's where I really developed a keen interest and a love for leadership development. So for 4 years, I was in a provincial position where I traveled all over the province and outside of the province as well, accompanying school board level teams and coaching as well, school principals all over the place. So it was really a transformative experience. And then from there, my business, I'm also an entrepreneur. So I've got my leadership consulting business, which is Inspire Leadership Coaching. And, actually the company was born out of that experience after that 4-year detachment or secondment experience. And since then, I've been, giving keynotes, workshops. I've got 2 podcasts. and I'm just living the dream, right? So I'm just doing what I love doing, which is adding value to others, which is helping leaders become even better. Because at the same time, Matt, I'm growing, right? So I'm taking as much from them as I'm able to give. So and that's the win-win situation, right?
Yeah,
And still being active. I'm not in the school. It's been 2 years now that I'm a district principal. But it allows me to be able to take a lot of those concepts that I'm learning and a lot of those connections that I'm making and bringing it into my school board, and actually making sure that the school principals and my board and the staff are all benefiting from that.
wonderful. And there's a lot to unpack there. And the first thing, you're talking about your business, website's down below. Make sure to check out Inspire Leadership. And so for those schools or leaders specifically looking to get that leadership coaching, I hear a lot of people talk about it. And a lot of times some people use buzzwords and just talk about things you read in magazines. But work I've seen you do is impactful in schools, working with leaders. What would that look like, getting coaching from you?
Well, it depends on the leader, right? Because it's an inside out process. That's the way that I see it. We start with the individual himself or herself, and just to see where is it that you can grow, where is it that you'd like to grow, where is it that you see yourself, next tomorrow, next week, next year, and we and we really start from there. What is it that you need to be able to expand, and to make sure that you've got all the tools in your tool chest that you need, to be able to not only do the job, but to be able to enjoy it, to be able to stay healthy, and to be able to grow and expand, and on the way develop other leaders in your wake.
Yeah, and I think the part that I see a lot of, and I was a new leader at one point, and had individuals come and work with me, and then trying to give back here. One of the things I'd love to hear your perspective on is, too often really skilled educators don't see themselves as leaders because they're not a principal. In your point of view, what makes a leader?
Well, I think just the fact that a person wants to better themselves and wants to add value to others, a person that's got a bigger vision, beyond what you represent and what you are, and wanting to expand into that, including other people, I think makes just about anybody a leader, right? So anybody that wants to get into that kind of work, or wants to invest in themselves in order to be able to invest in others, towards either a common goal or towards a state of mind, or a state in which that it's a better version today that it was yesterday, and work towards that with other people, I think is definitely a leader.
Yeah, and so many great resources on the website. I had that below. Here's the Twitter account to Inspire Leadership. And I think it's just a great opportunity to make things happen. And you seem to exude that. The other thing I was looking at, and I gotta ask you. So when I was on the website, I look at this. Like, is that like a professional photograph? Like, did you get like?
Okay, so I did.
I gotta know, like that. I'm looking at like, whoa, that's
yeah. No, it wasn't my iPhone.
Like,
it wasn't my iPhone. No, I took advantage of it because my wife, my beautiful wife, Bridget, is also an entrepreneur. She's got a spa salon here with about 23 employees in North Bay. So I'm very proud of her. She does very well. She's a fantastic businesswoman. Of course, she hires a photographer to take professional headshots of her estheticians, of her hairstylists and whatnot, the doctors that come in for the Botox and fillers and things like that. So she had, somebody come in one day, and I said, well, can I sneak in? Seeing as that I know the owner, maybe I could actually get a quick buy, and that's how it happened. But yeah, so I ended up getting some professional photos done, and wow, what a difference it makes.
Yeah,
on the
you're talking about Ryan Reynolds for Canada.
Yeah.
Like, seriously.
No makeup.
Nothing on you.
Promise. No
so you kindly you brushed over a little bit about some of the podcasts.
Yeah.
So I'd love to dive into, here's the Inspire Leadership podcast, and here's some of the work that you do under that umbrella.
Yeah, so that's actually my original podcast. I had been doing that one, hosting that one for about 4 years now. That's the French one. I'm bilingual, in case you guys haven't detected that accent.
There's a little accent there for sure.
That's right. It's a Franco-Ontarian or a French-Canadian accent. So yeah, so actually Inspire Leadership podcast is the French one, and I started that one about 4 years ago. And again, it was that quest, it's like writing blogs, right? I do it for me first. I'm doing it so that I can meet people, so that I can expand, I can learn. And at the same time, I want to expand my reach, my influence, right? I want anybody else that's out there that's ready to listen and that wants to listen, that could hear something that either I have to say or my guests have to say that can make that difference in their lives, make that difference in their leadership. Well, that's what I want to do. So what a great way to expand, that reach when it comes to sharing and when it comes to just, working together as colleagues, and because we're all colleagues in education, right? So a great way to help each other out. And the podcast, that first one was, a great way to do it.
And, so you were talking about a second podcast and another headshot.
That's same photo shoot.
Yeah, that's all right. So this was one that I obviously do not speak French. So this is one that I had the pleasure of being on, and another great podcast. And what do you look for when you are interviewing guests? I love some tips. Like what are things you do, because you've been doing this a long period of time?
Yeah. So that's evolved throughout time, throughout the years. At first, it was people in education, leaders. I even interviewed my school secretary on my French podcast. So people, doing some research at the university level and whatnot. But with the English podcast, again, it was just to reach like a different niche of people. My colleagues, my friends, like such as yourself, Matthew, to connect with my English speaking colleagues. I look for people that I, in my opinion, have something fantastic to bring to the table, and that needs to be out there and needs to be shared, in my opinion. So, for example, you mentioned how you came on the podcast, and it's funny because this coming Friday, I'll be putting out a video tomorrow, but this coming Friday is the first of the 5-episode series coming out. I don't want to say too much about that, but it's coming out.
I can't wait.
So that's what I look for. I look for people like you, for example, that are authors, for example, and have some important messages out there that I think that are really impactful. And it's something that I want to make sure that people are listening to and are receiving, because these are all things that can make a difference, in somebody's life, be it a teacher, be it a leader in business, a leader in education. It really doesn't matter. We can all learn something from every person that we meet. And whenever I find somebody that's I find really interesting, or that I'm really connecting with the message or what they're saying and what they're about, that's somebody that I try to get on the podcast. And like I did with you guys, I just reach out. I've got nothing to lose and everything to gain. So it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter who it is. If I'd like to have them on the podcast, I reach out, and if I get an answer, that's great. And if I don't, that's great as well. But for me, it's just a learning process and a growing process. But it's always who can add value to myself and who can add value to others. That's the people I want on the podcast.
And I think that's great. It is about learning from others. And the book that I did with Codebreaker, Power of Connections, is really about bringing people together. And then the most recent, actually the second most recent one, Disrupt the Status Quo, was
that's right.
You had on, but the one that I did solo to launch X Factor was Stronger Together. And through those, I launched the Codebreaker Innovators Lounge, which we bring people together. You do something very similar in through the Mastermind.
Yeah.
And I'd love for you to dive in and promote some of the work that you do with the Mastermind coaching series.
Yeah. So, the Mastermind is a service that I offer. Sometimes it's ongoing and sometimes it isn't going. It depends on the groups. So basically, if you don't know what a mastermind group is, it's a bunch of people that get together, and we'll meet about every 2 weeks for about an hour, and we'll share different ideas. We'll usually do like sort of like a book club together. We'll choose some books that we'll read together and then come together and talk about it. But the most important and the most interesting part of the mastermind group, when we get leaders that come together, is what we call the hot seat. So the hot seat is great because that everybody has a chance to sit on the hot seat, and that allows the person to be able to bring to the group, either a challenge that they're facing, or if they need some ideas or they're looking for some advice, they bring it to the group, and then they explain to the group what the situation is, and the group then has a chance to ask questions and further their understanding about the topic. And then the person can benefit from that collective intelligence where everybody is able to give a little bit of input and advice. So it's a great way to grow with like-minded people, get people to push you to go even further. And to be able to walk out of mastermind group meetings armed with different strategies and different ways that you could actually turn around and put them into practice the next day in your school, in your business, wherever you are.
Yeah, and I think part of that is just that continual growth and everybody learning. And I think
That's right.
one of the things I hear a lot from, sadly, sitting leaders is like, I'm done, like I made it. And that's not the case. Now, you're a sitting leader, you do coaching. Where do you go to get your learning and to get professional development?
Well, and that's really important for me because, way back when, Matthew, when I reflected on my career, and everybody at some point, will get into a lower point, right, where they get a little bit more negative. And so you're thinking back on those times, and I tried to find what was that common factor, what was that thread that was going through all those things. And for me, it was I had stopped growing. So It was important for me to find different avenues and different ways to keep, growing and keep really feeding that fire inside of myself. I needed that. Just the job wasn't enough. I needed something more. So that's the reason why, Inspire Leadership was born. That's the reason why I've got the 2 podcasts. That's the reason why I do the masterminds, both within my business Inspire Leadership coaching, as well as with the principals in my school board. That's why we're talking right now, Matthew, right?
Sure.
This is what adds, this is what fuels the fire. So, really important for me to get out there and connect with people. I also have coaches. I've had 2 or 3 different coaches, throughout the last, I'd say, about 4 years. And that's something really important too, where I can find a coach that's a little bit further than me and that's able to help me to ask the right questions and to help me get to my next level. So those are all important factors for me. Ongoing. I can never be stagnant, because if I'm stagnant, that's when I stop growing. And if I stop growing, if I stop creating and being creative, that's when I find myself starting to go down the hill, starting to get a little bit more complacent and getting more negative. I just need that fire.
Yeah, and I think, hearing all the great things you do and all the coaching and bringing everybody together, tell me what you think about when you see this.
Excitement, fire. Absolutely.
For the viewers who may not follow you on Twitter, and I'm going to put Joel's Twitter account back up there. What is this pictures of?
Well, that's a picture of a milestone. So, and thanks again to the risk that I took, because it was a risk for me to start This Is Leadership, the English podcast, because most of my days, I'd say 98% of the time, I'm speaking in French, right? So I don't have that much of an opportunity to speak in English. And I said, no, that connection piece, that feeding the fire piece was too important. Started the podcast, and that's when I reached out to you, Christine, Brian, and Daphne, to be on the podcast. And, I'm a firm believer that things happen for a reason. We made that connection. We had those conversations. We recorded the podcast, which are going to be coming out in the coming weeks. And from there, it just led to developing relationships, which led to that picture, which was the moment where I signed my contract with Codebreaker to write a book on leadership.
So did I hear that right? That was the start of the English podcast?
Yeah.
Like
so I'm only
episodes?
at like 8 episodes so far.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah. I've got a few banked, but I've published 7, and then the 8th is coming out this Friday, which will be the first episode of our series for the book. So, yeah. So and for the people that are listening right now, or that are going to listen to this recording, you got to take a risk. I was doing it for me. The podcast, I was doing it so that I can grow, so I can meet some really interesting people that could add value to me. And look what came out of it. Not only does it fuel me, does it give me that energy, that pep, almost like going to the gym in the mornings, right? When I go to the gym in the mornings, I get to work, I'm pumped up, I'm ready to go. When I do, events, when I speak with people like you, like right now, it just pumps me up and it gives me that energy. So, having this opportunity to be able to write a book on leadership, through Codebreaker was really a dream come true, right? And like I said, things happen for a reason. I had that in my head for many years, and the power of connections. Sometimes it just takes that one person that you're going to meet that's going to give you that little push, or a group of people that's going to give you that little push to go further. And all because I decided, hey, you know what? I'm going to invite a few people and I'm going to record a podcast in English. Go figure.
Yeah, and you don't know, and it's funny you should say that. Similarly to our listeners around that, I often hear like, who wants to hear what I have to say? Who wants to? And people don't start. And I think similar, with this podcast, it came about because of the book.
Yeah.
And a lot of things I do, I like to model that I write about. I did the Leadership Lounge to model the power of connections. I did this to bring people together. And same type of thing. Before coming on here, at 4 o'clock Eastern and 5 o'clock Eastern, I had calls with FETC, a national large
Yeah.
event, and I'm
Yeah.
going to be doing the podcast
That's awesome.
for all of their speakers. I'm going to be on the floor there. So all of that happens because you put yourself out there.
That's
and
right.
You take those smart risks and work through that. So as we get excited for the release of the book, whenever that happens, what are some things that the listeners or viewers are going to get out of that? What are you going to put in there?
Well, it comes mostly from my experience as an administrator myself, as an educator, and as a leadership coach as well, with the work that I've done throughout the years. With leaders, all over Canada, some in the States. And I think it's definitely going to be around leadership, but I think it's going to be around like transcending your leadership, right? Going beyond your limits. And when I'm thinking about going beyond my limits as a leader, I'm not talking about just the limits that in terms of wanting to grow past those limits. I'm talking about the ones that stop us. What you just mentioned, the limits that stop us from going beyond what we're able to do, right? So in the work that I did with school principals, and I've actually experienced it myself. All those times that I felt overwhelmed, I felt too tired. I put aside my physical well-being. I put aside my growth, and because I kept telling myself, oh, you know what, I don't have time.
Right.
I'm working till 8 o'clock at night. So it's going to turn around, that theme where hopefully the book, what it's going to bring to the leaders out there, and you can be a teacher, you can be a principal, you can be a business leader. It doesn't really matter. What I want to bring to the table is, what are some strategies that I can put into place, some of those good habits that I could put into place, those systems that I could put into place that'll allow me to be able to function at that high level of leadership. That's the level of energy that I want to tap into. And that's what I want to be tapping into most of the time. So what is it that I need to do as an individual? What is it that I need to think? What is it that I need to be? And what is it that I need to put into place in terms of strategies and habits that'll allow me to function at that high level leadership in all aspects of my life, not just my work, but with my family, as a spouse, as a brother, as a friend. For me, it impacted my life in every facet. And if it's something that worked for me and that allowed me to be that high level leader and allows me to continue to be that high level leader, then it could do it for somebody else as well. So again, like the podcast, like the blog posts that I do, I want to put it out there. It's going to be good for me. First of all, when we talk about putting that oxygen mask on your face in an airplane, that's number one. It's very, it's very selfish. I'm writing it because I need to put this into words to get my thoughts together and be clear about that, right? So that I can grow from that. Now, from there, if we can put it out there with Codebreaker and have other people experience it, put those, habits into place, those strategies, obtain that mindset, and, tap into that high functioning leadership, that high level leadership, then if it does it just for one person, I'm happy I put in the hours to write the book.
Awesome. So I ask the same question to every guest as they end. So before we wrap up, make sure to check out Joel. There's his Twitter account, website, so many great things going on. That's his own personal one, and then the business one. Check out all that.
Awesome.
All the great content, all the great work. So the last question I ask: what does Stronger Together mean to you?
Well, when I think about stronger together and what the work that you're doing, Matt, it takes me back to the saying, alone we go faster, but together we go a lot further, and that's absolutely the truth. We need to connect. It's harder. It's a hard enough job in education, as being a leader, being a teacher, being an educator in business, that you don't have to go it alone. Like I said a little bit earlier in the episode, we can learn something new from every person that we meet. Every person that we meet knows something that we don't know. So we need to be able to get together. We need to be able to share. We need to be able to support one another. We don't have to know everything. That's why we need to surround ourselves with the right people. So stronger together means that if I have a dream, if I get other people that, if I surround myself with the right people and I'm able to take the strengths from them and they're able to take strengths from me, then because of that connection, because of that relationship, I'll be able to attain that dream and even surpass it.
Awesome. Well, best of luck to you. Make sure to tune into both these podcasts, and book coming out. Blogs are great. Make sure all the great work you're doing. Thank you, and continued success. And we look forward to what's coming in 2023.
Yeah, it's going to be awesome.
It's awesome. And for all of our viewers out there, thank you again to Bulb and Swivel for making this possible, and for all of you to continue to tune in and share, because we are stronger together when we put we over me.